Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Michael Steele podcast. Sit back and hold on, because we've got a wild one for you this time with our buddy Malcolm Nance, who's a former naval intelligence and counterterrorism officer, historian, 4 times New York Times bestselling author, who has written a book that exposes a truth that I think a lot of us kind of deny or just outright ignore. And it really goes to the heart of the power and influence Donald Trump has had over so many Americans. You know, a lot of folks have overlooked Trump as, just being, egotistical, narcissistic, crazy. But Malcolm Nance sees it for what it really is, and sees him for what he really is: un-American, malevolent, extreme, and it gives rise to a lot of what we see happening from January 6th to the threats by white nationalists who are urging for a race war or some other type of civil war. Malcolm's new book, They Want to Kill Americans, the Militias, Terrorists, and Deranged Ideology of the Trump Insurgency, is not just a warning of what could come, but in fact, a warning for what's already happening. So buckle up, strap in, and get ready for an incredible conversation with our friend Malcolm Nance after this quick break. Well, folks, as I said in the intro, Malcolm Nance has written a book that it's supposed to prepare us for the future, but I would beg to differ. I think it's an important document for right now. Malcolm, welcome to the conversation, babe. It's good to see you. First off, I know you are in an undisclosed location, halfway around the globe. So prayers are with you. Stay safe, my friend. I know you're doing important work on behalf of and for the people of Ukraine, and certainly carrying the thoughts and prayers of a lot of Americans with you. So first off, you are well, I hope.
Yes, I'm very well. And you'd be quite surprised because I often say that I'm on the eastern wall of the defense of democracy, and that the book I had written was about the western wall of the defense of democracy. And that wall, every time I look over my shoulder, appears to be crumbling. and more for your listeners, the audiobook version of this has a 2,000-word essay that's not in the print edition.
Wow.
About Ukraine, about how I put on all of this armor and equipment, multicam and weapons, and, to go out to fight against the Russians who were trying to tear down the Eastern Wall. But in the West, this is what the right-wing crazies put on.
Right.
The exact same
thing.
Uniform, weapons, everything to attack and destroy democracy.
So let's get into that. The last time you were with us, we spent a great deal of time talking about the effort in Ukraine. I think it's, and we may save a little bit of that for the end just as an update, but really the genesis of this conversation is really centered around your new book, They Want to Kill Americans. And it really kind of gets into, as I said, not just a warning about what could possibly come, but what I think is already here. You talk about the phenomenon, the Trump Insurgency in the U.S., TITUS. Tell us what that is. Walk us through so we basically understand exactly what we're up against.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because the original subtitle to that book was called the Malicious, Terrorist, and Deranged Ideology of the Coming Trump Insurgency.
Right.
And last November, we removed that from the subtitle because I said, it's here. TITUS, the Trump Insurgency in the United States. That's the term that I coined to sort of bring all the elements of this campaign from the right wing into one word, because we do
Right.
that in the intelligence community. So TITUS stands for Trump Insurgency in the United States. And by last November, it was clear that by the time the book would come to publication, which was July, that they would be in a full-fledged insurgency. So when I use the term insurgency, what I'm talking about is a both political, paramilitary campaign to destabilize a legitimate government with the ultimate intent to overthrow that government. Now, the overthrowing of it can be through democratic means, by using elections, but so discrediting a government that they appear helpless. But generally, they also do it with a knowledge that there is a paramilitary wing or a terrorist wing that is doing the destabilizing.
Right.
But insurgency always starts off as a political movement that takes the fight from the halls of power into the streets. And I think we are quickly moving to that.
There were the section when you really get into Titus, for me, was very powerful. In fact, I want to quote from two specific paragraphs. Quote, "The typical Titus supporter believes that American democracy must be dismantled and rebuilt into a dictatorship to prop up Donald Trump and his neo-fascist ideology. Titus will continue to use the deny, attack, revenge, fear model. They will gladly harness the power of democracy for themselves to remove any future chances of democracy for all others." Then you go on and you say an eye-popping recognition that white Americans were establishing a far more militant paramilitary core of Titus, even while openly advocating acts of mass lethal violence and having the support of as many as 30 million Americans.
Very true.
This shit's for real. This is deep stuff. And then when you look at the response, Malcolm, to the FBI executing a duly authorized warrant by a United States federal magistrate, the immediate response, the going to your deny, attack, revenge, fear model, you saw that roll right out. What the hell are we up against here when we're looking, across the table at grandma at Thanksgiving? We need to worry about her going out and grabbing a...
Well, no, maybe not grandma going out grabbing an AR-15, but grandma being the Mother McGee, right? Who hide the guns under the bed, right? Who will lie and come out with the Trump flag in front of Mar-a-Lago, a place where she couldn't afford to enter the parking lot, right? So much less actually get inside there, no matter how much she supports Trump. But we're talking a campaign here where this is, let me put it this way. This is where my decades of research on Al-Qaeda and then ISIS comes to fruition, because the Trump insurgency is so much like ISIS in many respects.
Really?
And this, by the way, is the one thing that angers them the absolute most, when I, as a counter-terrorism expert, equate them to terrorists, right? The terrorists that they hate personally, very visceral. But ISIS's trick early on that differentiated them from Al-Qaeda was Al-Qaeda understood who they were, where they were. They were in the modern world. They were devout Muslims. They were going to use terror in order to politically separate governments that supported the United States from governments that wanted to support their version of Islam. But it was political, and they understood you had to use terror to get attention. ISIS is completely different, and this is where the Trump supporters are much more like ISIS. ISIS lived in an alternate reality in their head, in which their followers would believe that the acts that they are doing today could mentally transport them to 632, and they would be the antithesis, not the antithesis. They would be the recreation,
Right.
the latter day companions of the Prophet Muhammad, and they were making decisions as they would be made in 632.
Right.
And which meant that we don't coddle our enemies, we take them slaves. We kill all the men. Any person that doesn't support us, we kill them. They actually, when they were fighting in the city of Raqqa, were building trenches along the model of the trenches in the Battle of the Trench, that the second battle of the Prophet Muhammad fought. They lived in this time jumping reality. So when you see these guys go 1776 and we're doing the Second American Revolution, for many of them in their heads,
They
they believe they are carrying out a revolutionary act. And I don't know, I jokingly say, I don't know whether they watch The Patriot too much, or, they, put too much time in watching the movie 300.
Right. Right.
I'm not joking. They view these movies as practical documentaries in how they should behave. But in fact, I base a lot of their behaviors on a TV show that's about 15 years old called Jericho.
Oh yeah.
A film about atomic bombs going off in the United States. And by the time you get to the series finale, you realize it was a conspiracy internal to the government to eliminate liberalism from America and recreate America west of the Mississippi as an ultra-conservative, Christian nationalist state. And it's actually where the Gadsden flag was reincorporated back into the Tea Party movement from that TV show. So for these people, they are creating an alternate reality. And Donald Trump is their tribal leader. He's their avatar. He's the guy they all want to be, I think the standing joke was they're not poor. They're just all millionaires down in their luck. And they just all want to be Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is the guy they will never be, but he says the things they all think. The indecency towards other people, the throwing political correctness, screw you, you're, unabashedly white supremacist Donald Trump. It's what they all want to be. And this is what Republican politicians, many of them, are now unshackled from the chains of common decency.
So let's unpack two very important prongs of what you've set out and what you get into in the book. Again, they want to kill us. They want to kill Americans, the malicious, terrorists, and deranged ideology of the Trump insurgency. The first is, okay, I'm just going to be straight up honest about this, Malcolm. I'm done with the coddling bullshit. Right. I'm done with they feel so put upon. Oh, they feel so neglected. Oh, they feel so, that that America's passing them by. Oh, they feel, fuck you. Do you know 400 years of oppression? Do you know what that is, what that looks like? Do you have any idea what being put upon really is in this country? Well, when you're sitting there in your little enclave of the world,
yeah, to them, it's AR-15 ammo prices going from 39 cents a bullet to $1.25 a bullet, and gas from $3 a gallon to $5 a gallon. That's put upon for them.
How do we, first off, because I'm done with the excuse making. I just don't. I'm sorry. If you are a hardcore Trump supporter, you are, in my view, a terrorist. You are anti-American. You're not a conservative in the political sense in history that we have, nor are you a Republican. So cut that shit out.
Right.
How do we begin to deal with TITUS, with this insurgency, when you've got this piece of it that is staring you in the face and everybody clearly don't know what to do with it?
Right. Well, I'll tell you first, let me touch upon two parts of my book, the first sentence of the book and the last sentence of the book. I'm not going to tell you the last sentence of the book, but for anyone who's read my other books, and they've all been Times bestsellers. This is the fifth Times bestseller in a row that came out in the middle of the summer light reading season,
Right,
right?
right.
Like the wrong book to take to the beach. If you are looking at this book, something is very, very wrong. And the last one I had that was on, I was trying to displace Neil deGrasse Tyson's How to Be a Quantum Physicist in, 5 lessons or something. So some very light summer reading. And, this book starts with the words of Officer Michael Fanone, which is kill him with his own gun.
Right.
He heard that said.
Yeah.
Usually I write these books and, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm a true constitutional, true originalist in the feelings of the founding fathers. And, I believe everything that they said. I can walk the streets where this happened. And then I look at what's going on here. And usually my books end with some very uplifting, spiritual,
right,
faith American epilogue. Not this book.
No.
Not this book. There is no feel good at the end of this book. I have to slap you in the face with the hard reality that this book is going to be you reading it as a warning. All right. And then it's shooting up to #1 on the Times bestsellers list because there is a mass murder event going on in the United States. And everybody goes, oh, who's doing that?
Right.
This leads to answer your question. So what will it take, to quote Barack Obama, to break the fever?
Right.
I'm afraid to say that it is going to take a mass murder event carried out by some militia group, whether they take over a state house with, by the way, the acquiescence of the local government or the local governor.
Yeah.
Where they just decide when they call out the National Guard, the governor comes back and goes, the National Guard works for me. I'm commander in chief of this state, like the general in Utah said.
Yep.
He said, we don't respond to the federal government. The commander in chief is the governor. And it was the first time since the Civil War an American general dared utter that the president of the United States is not commander in chief. So you might have an incident where these local militias gain favorable political power in an area that's not particularly blue, right? In a place that might be red with a blue dot, like Nashville, right? City is actually liberal, or Charleston, South Carolina. But the governor and the government, as part of this movement, this insurgency, may actually favor the action that's being taken. I used a scenario in one of the chapters, I think it was chapter 3 or 4, where I had to come up with a hypothetical scenario. And the one ended up using high technology that you wouldn't think of right-wing extremists, but they have it, massacring 300 civilians and a sniper assassinating 7 or 8 different congressmen simultaneously. And the problem is the president of the United States' dilemma is not, what do we do with all these deaths? He realizes National Guard armories might be compromised by Americans that have infiltrated the reserves and may, in fact, have heavy weapons for a second rebellion. So, the president's first thought is, I want an inventory of every weapon that's not in the Department of Defense hands. And, not let's get ambulances out to the site. We may have a situation where fellow citizens, and people ask me, who are the they in this book who want to kill Americans? Well, the answer is quite simple. They are your neighbors.
Your neighbors, yeah. And beyond, they are your cousin. They are that uncle that everybody in the family kind of looks like, cockeyed. I mean, they're a lot closer to you than you may realize.
Oh, sure. They could be your plumber, your electrician. What did they say? That the average Trump voter was actually upper middle class, the person who has this, the beach house, or the boat, the giant, yacht and things like that. People with incomes $100,000+ and more are the overwhelming, but exclusively white, exclusively male, apart from their spouses. And so these people are typified by the guy in Oregon who said at the Charlie Kirk speech, when can we use our guns?
Right.
When we start killing people, because these people need to be killed. He's talking about everyone. This is back to ISIS. ISIS's ideology of mass murder, of which, by the way, QAnon, the right-wing QAnon phenomenon, has just copied wholesale. The ISIS ideology was anyone that is not a member of our group is no longer a Muslim,
right.
and can be mass murdered. And can be mass murdered.
So on that, continuing that, pulling on that thread, is it your contention then that those individuals, because I do have a second part, the other piece of this that goes into, which is more the government side of this, which I want to get into, but is it your contention that those individuals who make up TITUS, who are part of this insurgency, the grandmas, I mean the relatives and friends and neighbors and people that you see every day, what's their end game? Is it really about propping up Donald Trump in some way? Because my thinking at this point is this infection has gone beyond Trump. It's like when you cut yourself, right? And there's the open wound, right? And you think you've band-aided it and this starts to heal up, but the infection's already inside.
Right.
And starts to spread throughout the system. Do they really think this is, Donald Trump, the dear leader? Or is this really something that's moved into the space of ideology where they absolutely believe this to the point that they can act on their own without Trump?
Well, Donald Trump is again, he's an icon. He's an avatar.
Right.
He is an embodiment of their perpetual hatred of the things that they feel are entitled to them and them only. Again, very much like ISIS. Right. And anyone who is not part of that in-group, the normies, right? The average American, 65% of the United States, those people become the typification of an enemy. Because if you're not part of the in-group, you must be the out-group. There are no gray zone people in their world. And they say this, right? And if you look at the hardcore people in these groups, the QAnon followers, right? The reason that philosophy got so popular so quickly, 30 million Americans is the estimate of how many people actually believed in QAnon. The philosophy of QAnon is required to end in a genocide of liberals in America.
Right.
The mass murder of Democrats, rhino Republicans like you and me, right?
Right.
Anyone who is not one of us must be one of them, and there must be categorized into a funnel in which they must be murdered, starting with blacks, which, by the way, Timothy McVeigh, when he blew up the Murrah building in Oklahoma City, not just getting revenge for Waco, he read the Turner Diaries, which the Turner Diaries is almost a blueprint for the TITUS. The Turner Diaries was this phenomenal, fantastical world in which all whites were a horrifying, degenerate minority put upon by the entire government that had opened the coffers only for blacks and Hispanics and rich liberal elites. And they create a terrorist group called the Order. By the way, that group would be formed in the 1980s. William Pierce, the person who wrote the Turner Diaries, a terrorist group called the Order would be formed. But when McVeigh carried out that act, it was a copycat of the story in the book, where that explosion at the Murrah building was supposed to be the FBI building in Washington, D.C. That explosion was supposed to be the act that kicked off a race war in America, where cops and military members were supposed to go out and start mass murdering their peers and blacks and take guns in the armed forces and distribute it to the white members and go on the streets and start a killing spree where they would hang liberals from light posts in a day called the Day of the Rope, right? White race traitors is what they said about that. QAnon believed January 6th, 30 million Americans believed in what QAnon called the storm, which was the day that Hillary Clinton and all liberal politicians would be arrested by the armed forces. They would be brought to Guantanamo Bay. There would be summary executions in the streets, and the day of the rope would be kicked off. 30 million Americans believed they wanted this to happen.
So then it gets me back, Malcolm, to the core issue. Has this shit just been sitting beneath the surface for generations? Or is this something that's encoded in the white DNA of this country? Because nobody else is going around acting like this. You don't see Native Americans, you don't see Black folks, you don't see Asians, you don't see transgender. Nobody else is acting like this. They have not lost their damned minds. What is it that's driving these folks to believe this shit and to want to kill their fellow Americans? For what reason again? Because they're Black, or they want to live in the 1950s, which honestly wasn't that great for white folks either. So I'm just
well, Lyndon Johnson, I think, typifies. I'm going to give you two examples. Lyndon Johnson's quote about if you can convince the poorest, most uneducated white man that he is better in all respects than the most wealthy, educated Black man, then he will not only donate to you, he'll turn out his pockets.
Yeah.
Now, if you go back to the movie 12 Years a Slave, there's a scene in there in which the educated Black man who's kidnapped from the North is brought to the South, and it turns out he had worked on the Erie Canal and knew how to do engineering to drain the water out of a swamp with the enlightened British white guy.
Right.
But what did he do? It was the foreman who was insulted that a Black man was consulted, and the owner was required to sell him down in the South, and the white foreman came to the house to kill the white owner and the Black.
Yeah.
This is core entitlement. They believe, as one woman said, I heard at a town hall a few years ago, where she got on the stage, and I had just come back from the Middle East, and started screaming at the top of her lungs when Barack Obama was elected, our country has been stolen. I want my country back. I want my country back. And I thought, I'm now, as a terrorism expert, I'm seeing something here. There's something wrong. There's a malfunction here.
Right.
To elect a Black man, and this woman in her late 50s, early 60s is screaming and pulling at her hair that America has been destroyed because a Black man got into that job.
Yeah.
The Black guy every white person would want as their neighbor that they claim that Black should have, right? Right? One wife, 2 kids.
Right.
And Harvard educated. No, but now they want the white guy with 5 kids from 3 baby mamas. But it's their personal entitlement. And I do a section of the book where I talk about the psychology of the ideology, and victimization is a core one.
It's a core, yes, core. Right, it's core. Yeah.
They have to be the victim, and that motivates your people to do, quote unquote, as a lot of these guys say in forums, what needs to be done to move past our breaking point. These people are setting up for genocide. Many of them have in their minds the only way to cleanse America is to turn it into a dictatorship under Donald Trump. Back to your question about what happens if Donald Trump is not there. Donald Trump has one cheeseburger too many, keels over from a heart attack. Well, he's not just become an avatar. He has become the permission slip for indecency, right? For rebellion and murder. Donald Trump could sit there and choke on a hamburger with the Secret Service trying to get him on camera, and they will believe that it's Hillary Clinton. And that is the moment that we could see what we saw the other day, the guy go to the Cleveland
Yeah.
FBI or
Yeah.
the FBI and decide he's going to throw down. He knew what he was doing when he went through that metal detector with the nail gun, right? You can't kill a person or hurt a person with a nail gun. He wanted them to chase him to an ambush where he suddenly realized the overwhelming firepower of the SWAT team, every armed FBI agent in the region, DEA agents, U.S. Marshals, every SWAT team, local cop. Cops are the embodiment of law and order. So if you think if I throw a rebellion, the white cops will come on my side,
Right.
well, the white cops will default to we will kill people for law and order.
Right.
And as I like to say, this is why we fund SWAT teams, to make people regret their poor life choices. The problem is this may come down to a mass murder event where they take a state house and they start executing all the Democrats, letting the cops go. That would, by the way, that was Plan A in Michigan instead of kidnapping the governor.
Right.
It was a discussion about taking the state house with 200 armed men and executing all the Democrats after summary trials.
So that all of that narrative on the first part that I ask you about leads to the second, and that is knowing what you know, and very intelligent people inside our government know what you know.
Right.
Legislators know this as well. Why is there still such a hesitancy to categorize this as what it is, domestic terrorism? Why don't we put domestic terrorism laws in the book the way we have for Al-Qaeda and other foreign terrorists? Why are we so blind by these white nationalist pigs and their terrorism and the emergence of it and seemingly allowing it to fester?
Well, in fact, it is actually the Democrats that are the roadblock here. There's a pretty lively discussion towards the back of the book where we talk about domestic terror laws. And I quote our good friend Frank Figliuzzi and others who say we can't do anything. There's no laws in the book. There is no such thing as a domestic terrorism law. Timothy McVeigh was not convicted of domestic terrorism. He was convicted of detonating a weapon of mass destruction, the assembly use of a weapon of mass destruction, and murder. I think they tried him on 3 federal agents, right? Killed 186 people. But there is no law that says you are an American terrorist. That will come when that mass murder event occurs that I'm telling you about. Someone out there is plotting this right now. For the last year, I've been holding my breath because I turned that manuscript there. Everything you're reading is a year old. It was intended to be a prediction, but because of the publishing world, publishing houses went under, printing houses went under. It took a year to get it to press. And it not only held up, it's going to hold up for the next generation. Because it's a question of, I monitor the internal chats of these right-wing groups, and you see them. It's like each one is eyeing the other or to saying, are you going to be the one that kicks it off? Are you going to be the one that kicks it off? And the phrase I see the most is, quote, what is our breaking point, unquote. What is our breaking point? And it's like the kids in the lunchroom daring one another to go to go and talk to that girl or to go pick a fight or to go near the haunted house, right? They're each daring each other. And at some point, they're going to reach a critical mass where enough of them get together like the Michigan plot, right? And only this time, I think in my scenario, I said it was a special forces officer who amuses out loud to Fox News, you call us a terrorist, well, we may as well start acting like it. And that's when we move into the Irish Republican Army in low-grade insurgency. That will be acts of point terrorism, attacks on National Guard armories to steal heavy weapons, things like, grenade launchers and machine guns, heavy machine guns, or, hand grenades, things like that. And it'll become more like a banana republic, but they will only occur to where they can get away with it in red states. Because, well, when I say get away with it, as Mao Zedong says, and anyone who goes to a terrorism course learns this, is right. The terrorist swims in a sea of the population. Clarity to that is it must be a population that gives them popular support.
Right.
Terrorist groups collapse when they lose popular support. So, it's going to take a level of mass revulsion in the United States for an act that they perpetrate, which will be at the level of Oklahoma City, if not bigger.
The book is They Want to Kill Americans, the Militias, Terrorists, and Deranged Ideology of the Trump Insurgency. We're going to take a quick break because, baby, we need it right now because this brother has scared the bejesus out of us. We're going to catch our breath. When we come back, I want to grab you, Malcolm, on what we are going to be seeing over the next 18 months or so as we get ready for the next big presidential election, certainly the November election, and the consequences of possibly prosecuting Donald Trump. We'll have more with our guest, Malcolm Nance, right after this. Welcome back, everybody. Michael Steele and Malcolm Nance getting down, throwing down. Look, I'm going to find myself an undisclosed location after this conversation. This brother is keeping it real. But Malcolm, and again, just as a reminder, folks, highly recommend you pick up a copy of They Want to Kill Americans by Malcolm. It's his new book. It is out now. It is a warning about the future, but it's also a warning about the next 20 minutes as we look at our lives real time. We just saw the president, former president, undergo a duly elected search warrant at his home in Mar-a-Lago. How does that affect this insurgency?
Well, first, can I make a quick comment about some of the contents that were found in that house?
Please.
I held a top secret SCI, Special Compartmented Information, special access, which means other categories above TSSCI, Special Access Program security clearance for 30 years, 3 decades. I was mortally terrified of every piece of paper. Okay, here's how bad this story is. Because the president has access to material which is, eyes only. Presidents,
right.
Not only does the president read it, the president can only read it with his eyes, right? That's what that actually means. It doesn't mean, president's eyes only. It means do not read this out loud. Okay?
Right.
And I have been involved in special missions, what we call NCA missions, National Command Authority directed missions, where my activities were being reported straight to the White House Situation Room or straight to the National Security Advisor, Vice, and the president in real time. That's how serious some of these missions are. We have, high risk missions. That's all I'm going to leave it at.
Right.
So, but then you get to the stuff that's Oval Office owned, right? Or access to materials which the president has authorization to any secret in America.
Right.
So if he wants to know about the aliens in Area 51, he can ask about that, and he can go look up all the documents or go to any SCIF, any sensitive compartmented information facility, and look at any document, just like any other person. Because by dint of the president being elected, the American people have given him the highest security clearance in the land. However, the documents are not his property.
Right.
So for example, he disclosed in a manner that was not unclassified materials that showed Iranian capabilities of a weapon, and it was put on a newspaper. As soon as I saw it, my first thought was, oh my God, I don't know what's going on here, but I would go to prison like Reality Winner for 5 years. Now, Reality Winner's a young woman who, I've spoken to her mother. I haven't spoken to her. I've said on air, she's an idiot. She thought she was getting something as a contractor and exposed one page via the online, magazine, The Intercept, and went to prison for 5 years for the disclosure of unauthorized disclosure of classified information. And what she disclosed wasn't even near top secret SCI. It was like secret.
Right.
And here's how the levels go: confidential, secret, top secret. That's called general service. Just generic.
Right.
Top. When I lose my clearance for screwing up, I get a generic top secret clearance.
Right.
That's how. Now, above that is SCI, which is the most confidential. SCI is higher than regular top secret. And then above that are special access programs, which I don't even want to know about. Right? Asked about Bin Laden, the helicopter using the Bin Laden raid. And they go, do you know anything about it? Do you going to tell? I was like, I don't have a need to know, and I don't want to know.
Right.
And I'm a hostage, and it hovers over my position, and I'm thrown into a cool helicopter. And then I ever saw it when I get out of that helicopter. Same thing with this classified material. Anyone who has ever been near it understands how serious this is. I don't care if you're the president of the United States. You cannot do the Harry Potter, confundum charm and wave hands over it and say it's declassified. There is a chain of custody. There is a chain of declassification. If you declassify it for the president, it is declassified for the world, including Russia.
Yeah.
So whatever these documents are, and now another thing is that even though I worked in human intelligence, 90% of my career was in signals intelligence, NSA stuff. And to find that there was a document that nuclear stuff, bad. The way that we collect intelligence against a very specific enemy with the very specific sources mentioned in there that would go to the White House will destroy that source, will burn that source.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times it involves sensitive, decryption systems that only NSA possesses, not the CIA, not the DIA, not NGA, only NSA. You blow that, it's like going out on the London newspapers in 1942 and saying, Britain breaks German codes for you, right? The Enigma machine. I'm a member of the Bletchley Park Society, so this stuff is mind-boggling. I cannot wrap my head around how, one, irresponsibly effing dangerous this is. Two, my money on how did the president of the United States get these documents? Oh, hey, that's a cool ass document on the development of, the B-47 nuclear bomb. I'm just going to drop this into the Resolute desk and keep it here until I leave. Someone bought him that document. I want that person's ass.
Right.
I want that person's arrested before Donald Trump is ever indicted. If you have can I use bad words here?
Sure.
If you have the fucking nerve. All right, 30 years, I literally bet my life against the security of those documents and what I knew in my head. Mm-hmm. There were two instances in my career where I was in a operation that was clandestine, near or behind enemy lines. I'm not going to say, but I had to commit. The program that I had in my head would kill a lot of people if it had been divulged. And I made a commitment at that point. Hey, if I'm taken captive, if it's one of those circumstances, what is in my head is in fact more valuable than my life, even though they tell you it's not.
Right.
But it just happened to be that I was in this tiny special access program where a lot of people around me would die. And I committed myself to the defense of that information, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump, it's like, what? I have the phone calls between Macron and his girlfriend. I will set that aside for blackmail.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Or I have the actual plans to an intermediate range ballistic missile and the U.S. micro miniaturized tri-warhead nuclear warhead that I will sell to Saudi Arabia. I could get probably $2 or $3 billion for that.
Mm-hmm.
Prison. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Prison. I don't care who it is.
Right.
The Constitution of the United States does not protect you from being a criminal. It does not protect you from treason. And I'm going to go on a limb here because over the last 7 years that I've been talking about Donald Trump, I went and did a Google search to see how many times I mentioned the Espionage Act. And it's a pretty cool dozen.
Right.
Mainly Mike Flynn and some others who were selling what we thought were acting as agents of a foreign power. If there is even the slightest hint that he was going to barter this stuff off in the post-war.
So, yeah. That raises an interesting point, Malcolm, because you know how these nervous Nellies are here in Washington.
Yes.
Everybody does. Oh, well, we've never gone after a former president. He's a former president, and da. I'm sorry, if the rule of law is the baseline and no one is above that, then yeah, you're going to be treated a certain way for having committed acts, criminal acts against the Constitution and the country and the office you hold. But that doesn't seem to be a relevant pitch for folks. They seem to be hesitant.
No. It's not a relative pitch for Democrats in power, because Democrats in power, I'm a Democrat, we are decent people. And what we want to do is we want to maintain order and decorum. And we want to do this fairly and correctly. The Republicans don't behave that way anymore. They're not even Republicans. They're Trump.
They're not.
Right? The average Republican like you and me, Colin Powell Republicans, right? We are boom, left and down at the bottom left corner of the XY chart, where we just above and to the right, in the Colin Powell strong national security, socially liberal world. You and I, you can't even get invited to parties anymore.
Right.
So this is Trumpism. Let's call it what it is. Okay. There's no republicanism involved, because what's a republic, right? A democracy in which the rights of the minority party are protected. Not these guys. They are pure power players. It is about acquiring power, using power, eliminating power for your enemies, and crushing them before you, hearing the laments of their women, right? I think so. As they do this, they view any wavering, they view any decency, any sign of civility as a human weakness, which must be eliminated from their party of Trumpism, which is why they go to God. Who's got the nerve? I was just watching the news report. Me and my friends here in Ukraine, who we have a room full of weapons, are watching idiots in front of the FBI building in Arizona protesting with long rifles. Really? How well's this going to go if you decide to step up to this game? My problem here is Donald Trump, and because of civility, they are treating him with these like 19th century kids' gloves.
Yeah.
Where he must be given deference because he was elected president of the United States. No, we need to go to the William Tecumseh Sherman model of war fighting, right? Let me quote Sherman in two particular instances. In one instance, he went to the city of Atlanta,
right,
appeal for the city's elders to not burn the city to the ground, and he said, "You have brought war upon the United States. Now you're going to see what war is." And he burned the city down. And one of my other famous Sherman quotes was a battle where he was standing there and his men were going head on. And he goes, "Smash them up, smash them up, smash them up." That's how you have to deal with Donald Trump.
Right.
I did Michael Cohen's podcast a few weeks ago, and he goes, "You have no idea. the depth this man will go to here. If his acolytes get back into power, they will eliminate democracy in the United States and be happy about it.
Yeah.
Because like ISIS, again, they are not just performing acts of terrorism. ISIS isn't a matter of terrorism. It was the re-engineering of a imagined crazy version of Islam in their head, but imposing it on your reality so that you go, wow, they're crazy. And in their heads, they actually see themselves not riding around in Toyota Land Cruisers, but on camels in the 7th century.
Right.
So, but killing you because you couldn't possibly be a good person. These people do the same thing with their Trump truck convoys and their devotion to Trump as an entity, as an avatar, as the tribal leader, right? As the King Leonidas, you know?
Right.
And so when in fact, he's more like, you know, he's more like the King of Persia. So he rules through fear. And that's why my 4-stage strategy, right? Deny. Remember, I wrote this in like May 2021. Deny anything that is put before you as a lie to create confusion. Attack your enemies in the entire premise of whatever they accuse you of. Revenge. Go after every individual who is involved in that and crosses you, particularly Republicans. And then fear. Use your armed supporters to intimidate and or kill people. Right? What did Trump say yesterday about this is only the beginning of it? Or
that's the key thing, is that this is only the beginning of it. And one you noted earlier, as we let you get back to the good work you're doing on behalf of democracy in Ukraine, that this does not end well, essentially, is how you concluded. And are there steps that citizens can take, that we, the people, the power that we still have imbued in us, infused by the words of the Constitution and the rights that we have, to protect ourselves in this land? Or is this just the battle that has to be fought, and hopefully the worst side doesn't win?
You know what? I'm going to give you another cultural reference. There's a British film that came out about 10 years ago called 28 Days After.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about a zombie outbreak. But at the beginning of the film, there's, the zombie outbreak is happening, but it's happening at such a small scale, people don't understand it. And at the beginning of the film, there's a news report talking about street fighting in the Second American Civil War. And it shows people shooting at each other, our armored personnel carriers shooting at people. And I go, that's ridiculous. Yeah. Well, now
not so much.
I have a completely different view of this, because in that time, that 12 years of slave foreman's white entitlement is, as I say in this book, is also the camouflage that allows them to swim like fish through the sea of the American populace. That's how they carried out January 6th.
Mm-hmm.
No one stopped those people from bringing bats, bars, guns, backpacks, bear spray to a rally where the president of the United States was.
Could you imagine if you and I showed up with a bunch of brothers from the neighborhood, armed to the teeth? How far will we make it down Pennsylvania Avenue?
In fact, they wanted that so that they could have the race war that they were getting, that they would be fighting street fights, Anschlussing, right? Coming into another section of America to whiten it and purify it and take it back as their world. The only thing was they had that bizarre respect of the rule of law about bringing weapons into the district. But I think that, and I said this several times in the book, their camouflage was their white skin. It allowed them to close, engage, and surprise their enemies, which was the police. Because they were thinking, oh, this is Trump voters. They won't do anything. Oh, they're attacking us. Our lines are collapsing. They're breaking into the building. They intended, and I said this that very night on Joy Reid's show or the special coverage, I said, because I really needed to warn people. I said, I believe in these crowds. That afternoon, I said, I believe in these crowds. There is a murder cell. There is a group of people designated to go into that building and use the crowd as a cover, and they will start executing people. And I could almost feel the tension of the pause for that second. I say, I swear, I am telling you this as a terrorism professional. They had better hold that building, or there's going to be mass murders, summary executions, rapes, sexual humiliations, and assaults. And I was sitting in my office terrified for what I was saying, because I'm like, that's the Capitol. Right. And I go, I know a terrorist attack when I see one. And the only thing that's missing is the concealed handguns. And there were many. You get these right wingers go. I actually had Ben Shapiro, that moron, actually say there were, this is the same guy, their intellectual, who actually challenged me on air, calling me a liar when I said the rally had 40,000 people in it. I said, that's the Park Service's estimate. 10,000 engaged in combat on those steps. You can see it. Any photo, you'll see 1,000 people.
Easy.
Right? 10,000. When you look all the way down the Western Steps, easy 10,000. And 2,000 entered the building. They're almost up to 1,000 arrests. And this guy goes, that's a lie. That's an absolute lie. And I sat there for about 1 second on Bill Maher's show. And I said, this is where our common decency kicks in, right? And I, for that very fleeting second, was about to say, don't you ever fucking call me a liar.
Yeah.
I'm going to change the whole tenor of the show.
Yeah.
And then I said, step back. He's an idiot, right? And then a few minutes later, got a good chance to insult him, about his technique, about how he just comes out and puts words in your mouth. And I go, is this what you do on your show because you suck at it? But that one moment where I should have done what I should have done, that we're going to have to endure with. Yeah. The inflection point will come. And there will have to be people on the Hill who Democrats need to stop using a lot of words. And they need to start saying, you are a liar. How dare you come into this house of honor and effing lie to the American public? I challenge you. You better take that back right now. Right. This is why Tom Perez did not want me running for Congress. Because I'd be calling duels out. Right? Yeah. Jokingly in the last election, they were like, Malcolm, run for president. I said, I could probably get 15% of the vote, the Democratic Party vote, and end up and I said, but I would be Joe Biden's anger translator. I go, what my esteemed colleague, Senator Biden didn't say is that you're a motherfucking liar. Right? So we need to understand that democracy is gasping some of its last breath. This November is the election. Now, forget about 2024. We lose the House or the Senate in this election, it's over.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, and have been yelling as loudly as I can and pushing as hard as I can to help people understand exactly your point.
I'm coming, by the way. My drawdown date for me is the first week in October. There's no way I can sit here and watch American democracy collapse.
Yeah.
And say, well, I'm fighting in Ukraine. I've been here since January.
Right. So, and before we let you go, give us a quick update on Ukraine and what you're seeing there right now, and how Zelensky is still, despite the odds, holding this thing together.
Well, we're on day 167 of the 3-day invasion. Ukrainian. First off, the news media is famously about a week to 2 weeks behind in what's happening on the ground here. When they don't see a dynamic story like a major offensive, and they don't seem to understand that the strategy that's going on down in Donetsk is Russia has the throw weight to win these tiny little villages. But Zelensky made it clear in July. Yeah, they took Severodonetsk. I knew people who fought in Severodonetsk. I supported intelligence operations down there, which have had murderous effect, by the way, for those of you who say, oh, you're not doing anything. I carry a firearm. I carry weapons, pistol, long rifle, 9 magazines of ammunition and hand grenades. Okay, I have a day job. My night job is making sure people who do the day job kill more effectively, right? And that requires extremely murderously accurate information. What's happening now is, now that, can I point out something? I don't often brag about what I've done, even though I've written 5 times bestsellers. I want you to think back. When is the first time you heard about the high mobility multiple rocket launch system being introduced in Ukraine or being asked for in Ukraine? And I will tell you what date that was. I know the Secretary of Defense was probably talking about it on day 1.
Right.
On April 19th, when I came out on Joy Reid's show and introduced myself as joining the Ukrainian International Legion, if you recall, at the end of my little speech, I made a personal plea to the President of the United States. And I said, Mr. President, if you're watching, we need the high mobility multiple. It took 12 weeks for the first one to show up, but it took about 3 to 4 weeks for it to actually get into the discussion. Right. It was almost like people were like, hey, yeah, why aren't we sending the HIMARS?
But why wouldn't they recognize Ukraine needed that to begin with?
I think, of course, at the Secretary of Defense level, I'm patting myself on the back a little too much. But I know for a fact, due to our friends over at the White House, that the Vice President saw that little speech of mine. And by the way, the next night, so did Vladimir Putin. I was on Russia's most popular roundtable political show with a woman named Olga Skabeva, who is known as Putin's mouth. She's the Tucker Carlson of Russia.
Of Russia, right.
Me by name as a U.S. intelligence officer and soldier of fortune. As a member of the International Legion, and Ukrainian intelligence said, Vladimir Putin knows your name personally now. And so does every person in Russia. But at the end of my speech, I called for the high mobility multiple rocket launch system to be introduced to Ukraine. And I think for a while, a lot of people didn't quite recognize what we were asking for,
right?
Which get us shitloads of precision rockets that can fly 300-400 kilometers. It took about 8 weeks for it to get into the popular discussion at the Pentagon to Ukraine level. But during that time, I was also speaking to people in Ukraine. I worked for an intelligence agency back then. And I was like, y'all need HIMARS. Y'all need the M270 multiple rocket launch system.
Right.
And, yeah, HIMARS. Tell us about that. I'm like, oh, don't you know about HIMARS? Right?
Do we have any on the shelf?
So I'm taking credit for HIMARS. He's bringing it into the popular domain to where I made that appeal to the president. And the president probably said, HIMARS, guys, what the heck? I don't know.
Right. No, but it does speak to you're bringing the weight of your time in service in strategic locations, in strategic jobs that have dealt with these types of issues. And so it is good to know that you are in play. And what that and all that means, Malcolm, for national security interests, U.S. intelligence interests, and certainly for the interest of the people of Ukraine that you are serving as part of their international legion. I just think it just speaks volumes about how important democracy is to you and why it should be of value to all of us.
It truly is. And, people are like, are you writing a book over here? It's like, no, I don't have time.
I have time to write a book.
I get up at 4, I go to bed at 10, and I'm exhausted. Just keeping track of what's happening in front of a day in Ukraine feels like a week. A week feels like a month. I mean, things change in hours here that are very, incidental and have consequence. And literally people's lives can pass if you screw up. I don't have time to do any of these things. People are doing studies and just, I don't even have time to podcast or even, I do your podcast.
Right. Look, we have to carve this time out, folks, just so you know. We have to carve it out. I
listen to Stephanie Miller like once a month now. And, it's the only free hour where I'm not thinking about what's happening. But I could be sitting here in this city, which gets bombarded a lot.
Well, if listeners will recall, the last time we were on, in the middle of our conversation, there was some shelling that went off around you, and you were like, "Okay, can we just stop for a second? Just hold up, just give it. Let me." And you started. It was fascinating to watch. You started counting, waiting for the intervals to see whether or not, okay, another one's coming and what.
Yeah.
And then you were like, okay, we're good.
Yeah. The problem is I'm in a more residential area and they've been bombarding residential sections. So, but I'm in an underground bunker, actually.
Right.
Underground city, let's put it that way. That's very nice. And, but when I'm not doing any of this for personal profit, that's for sure, right? I'm losing 10. I'm not on television. I'm literally paying them. I use the entire advance of this book, $100,000. It's been donated to the International Legion and the Military Intelligence Agency, buying equipment, night vision, and things like that. Because the people to my right and the guy to my left and the guy to my right or the woman to my right, that equipment keeps them alive. It keeps me alive.
Yeah.
And, it keeps this war to defend democracy here alive. But my God, people, I'm taking care of this end. It's you, the listeners, who have to take care of this other end, or we're going to be in serious trouble.
Well, we take to heart your warning as outlined, and they want to kill Americans. It's out now, folks. Pick up a copy, read it, learn it, study it, appreciate it, because it comes from someone who has a unique insight into the mindset and the capabilities of those who want to kill us. So Malcolm Nance, my man, I'm honored to call him a friend, and so proud of the good work you're doing, both there in Ukraine and here at home. We look forward to welcoming you back home in October, and stay safe and be well, my friend.
Thank you very much. I'll see you soon.
All righty, folks, that does it for this time together. But we love it when you spend that time with us. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter at Michael Steele. Follow Malcolm and what he's doing on Twitter as well, at Malcolm Nance. Pick up a copy of the book, They Want to Kill Americans, The Militias, Terrorists, and Deranged Ideology of the Trump Insurgency. In the meantime, go to Apple Podcasts and show me some love, and we'll always appreciate that. And until next time, be safe, be well, take care. And then maybe we'll all meet up with Malcolm at a pub here in DC at some point, which be one hell of an evening.
Dubliner.
There you go. Dubliner. Baby, I'm old school DC. That's my joint. I love Dubliner.
All right.
Love it. All right, guys. Take care now. Until next time.